Hello, everyone. I'm Deborah Evans, LLG's Chief Executive, and I'm joined today once more by Dennis Hall, LLG's Bulletin Editor. Hello, Dennis.
Hello, Deborah.
Now, of course, there's been loads in the news over the last couple of weeks with respect to governance concerning local authorities. And much of the announcements have been very positive. So what in particular would you like to highlight then, Dennis?
Well, Deborah, this really is a strange one. The first Labour budget in 14 years has set off shockwaves in local government, and for a reason totally unconnected with the fiscal policies set out in the budget itself. Indeed, this wasn't even mentioned in the Chancellor's speech, and it's this: reorganisation. Some councils have reacted very angrily to the prospect of wholesale local government reorganisation after the government said in its budget papers that it was drawing up an English devolution white paper that would set out its plans. Now, the autumn budget red book revealed that these plans, including working with councils to move to simpler structures that make sense for their local areas, with efficiency savings from council reorganisation, helping to meet the needs of local people, Deborah.
Well, yes, I did see that actually, Dennis. And according to the document, the white paper is going to set out some of the detail around that. So devolution, is it evolution or revolution? We'll have to see. But it did state that it would also include the government's plans to widen devolution to more areas, deepen the powers of existing mayors and combined authorities, obviously, and ensure they have the tools needed to boost economic growth. Now, the government did add that it's working closely with local leaders in this upcoming white paper. And we obviously know that the government is very pro-devolution and they like the mayoral model. So what concerns have people expressed then, Dennis?
Well, the District Councils Network, the DCN, warned that reorganisation meant district councils faced being merged into larger unitary councils, which it argued were further from communities and covered much larger geographical areas. And the DCN added, the suggestion that reorganisation will automatically bring savings and make sense for local areas is very much open to question. There's also no mention in the early stage proposals of how any reorganisation will improve work between councils and other public services, such as the NHS and the police, which operate on different boundaries to local government. Deborah.
Well, I think that districts have basically warned that this is a serious threat to the 164 district councils' frontline services. Now, that's really important. Things like economic development, housing, planning, waste collection, parks, green spaces, environmental health, leisure services, all things that are really important to local communities. And what they think is that the danger is that money is diverted from these services to basically plug this growing financial gap in social care. And that's their main concern there. And Councillor Sam Chapman-Allen, who's the chairman of the District Councils Network, said that they believe that the wholesale reorganisation of local government is the last thing the country and our local communities need. And it would be a huge distraction and could actually paralyse the delivery of local services in large parts of the country for the rest of the Parliament. Now, house building and economic development are among the areas that face disruption. And we also know that they're very important to the government too. So, Dennis.
Well, yes, I saw all of that too, Deborah. And he did go on to say it would be far better for the government to empower the districts as part of the devolution agenda than to risk a counterproductive upheaval, and particularly at this time. And he also said, past experience suggests local government reorganisation is no panacea in itself for saving money and improving the financial sustainability of local councils. And he pointed out new unitary councils have experienced deep financial difficulties. You know, Deborah, this is really a big issue for many of our members in Lancashire, in the Midlands, in Devon, the Southwest, and East, and the East and Southeast, where two-tier local government remains, it appears, under risk of abolition.
And I think there's no doubt, actually, Dennis, that the general focus of the budget is about combined authorities, with the talk of these integrated settlements being introduced over the next few years. And they're going to have new powers, new borrowing capacity, etc. And it may be that the government aren't really seeing districts as part of this model for the future in this mission for growth. But obviously, that we do not have a one-size-fits-all country. You know, we've got very dense urban areas, we've got countryside areas. So are some of the think tanks talking about this, Dennis, and do they have views?
Well, indeed, they have. And Deborah, perhaps I should say from my own personal experience, I was involved in two-tier local government reorganisation back in 2007. And all of these arguments were made then, so they will be made again in the future, irrespective of what some of the think tanks have started to say. But yes, we have the Centre for Cities, who've just published a paper entitled Economy First, a pragmatic English devolution white paper. That's the title there. And it says, the government is correct to see devolution within England as a priority and at the centre of their strategy on the economy and public services reform. The national debate, they say, on devolution is picking up in response, and at the heart of the debate are the geographies to which powers are actually devolved.
Now, that's an interesting point, actually. And I know that the report actually talks about taking an economic, geographically led approach to devolution. And that is about recognising these differences that we were just discussing, and that economic geography should be at the centre of devolution for both big cities and the shires, which we know are incredibly different. And that a simple system of combined authorities for the big cities and large county unitaries for the shires is actually easier to accomplish than the alternatives, and would probably have the best chance of improving economic outcomes. So more of a mixed approach is what that think tank would recommend.
Well, that seems to be the case, and it is the central point of what they argue in the Centre for Cities paper. Simply that the English devolution white paper should prioritise combined authorities in the big cities, as you say, with governance split between the new metro mayors and the boroughs and unitary county authorities elsewhere in this country. Now, it's interesting, this in particular from a historical perspective. These unitary counties should have the powers, the report says, of both local authorities and combined authorities under devolution. And the logic is exactly, and this is the historical point, the logic of all of this is the same as that was argued in the famous Redcliffe-Maud report, which I remember, which was widely considered the best proposal for local government reform in England back in 1969, when Harold Wilson was the Prime Minister. At that time, unitaries of this size and scale were considered to be the best possible option going forward. But ultimately, in the 1970s, that option was never completely followed through. Interesting times, Deborah.
So what you're saying then, Dennis, is this is an idea from the last century?
Indeed, it is.
Yeah, definitely what goes around comes around there, isn't it? So if anybody would like to read any more about this, it's all in Bulletin 42, which is on our website. But in the meantime, it's goodbye from me.
And from me too.
Thank you for listening.